Hi, I'm Marna. Thank you for joining me. All right, imposter syndrome. What is it? What can we do about it? Now, look up here. You should see the video that I just did for what imposter syndrome is and why we tend to develop it. This is a very prevalent thing in society, especially in a society where you are so focused on what your achievements are, when you are judged by your accomplishments. Because if you feel you did not earn that accomplishment, then that anxiety of, okay, they're going to realize I'm not as good as I look like, will catch up with you. So how does imposter syndrome tend to manifest? There's a number of ways that it shows up in people's lives. You could be a perfectionist. And as a perfectionist, you are always having to tinker just a little bit more. You can make it better if you just work at it just a little bit harder, a little bit longer, and then you fixate on the flaws, and that tends to derail you almost completely because there's something that you cannot make perfect in this project. And if it goes out and it's not perfect, people will see you for the fraud that you are. That's one way it manifests. Then there are the people who become superheroes because they feel that they're inadequate for rising to the task. They have to go above and beyond in accomplishing it. It's not enough that you are doing what's expected of you. You have this compulsion to go beyond what is expected, to go beyond what anyone else would do, just to prove that you're not faking it in what you do accomplish. You find people who become experts, and hi, I'm in this category too. People who become experts are those of us who feel like we never know enough. We've never learned enough. There's always something more to learn, something more being discovered. And no matter how good I am in my field, there's always going to be someone better, and that's going to mean I'm not good enough. It means that obviously there are people who know more than I do, and who am I to say anything at that point if I can't be the expert? Then you have people who try something, and if they're good at it the first time, perfect, they'll keep right on doing it. But they're not good at it the first time, and why bother? No, I did not draw a perfect circle freehand the first time I sat down to do it. Obviously, I'm not meant to be an artist, so I'm not even going to bother trying anymore. And often, if it's something that they expected to be good at, sure, I can sit down on the piano and play it. So what if I've never seen one before? I know how to read music. I can do this. If it's something that they don't immediately succeed at, it can be crushing to their self-esteem, particularly if they've built things up beforehand by bragging about what they're going to do. And then you have people who almost become hermits. They like to be alone to do what they do so that no one can see their failures. In fact, they get so hung up on this that they will reject the opportunity to work with other people because they don't want anyone to see that they may have to do something more than once to get the final product. And these people, often are alone for large parts of their lives simply because they are afraid of being exposed for the frauds they perceive themselves to be, no matter how accomplished they are. So this is how imposter syndrome kind of worms its way into our lives and affects what we do, how we do it, and who we become. So what can we do to get past this energy? How do we combat imposter syndrome in our lives? How do we train ourselves to feel deserving of the recognition that we receive for what we do? That's a little mind bender for you, isn't it? It's not a matter of getting the rest of the world to see that we're accomplished people. but a matter of getting ourselves to admit that, yeah, maybe I do know a thing or two about a thing or two. So, yeah, these are very deep feelings, and they can derail your entire life, and it can be very difficult to confront them. It can be difficult to even recognize you have them. But once you do, you start opening up ways to deal with it. First thing you do is talk to someone about it. Get that validation from a trusted friend that, honey, you spent 27 hours putting together that diorama. There's a reason it looked so good. You put in the effort to get this result. Stop selling yourself short on that. We need that from an external source at times, because we're sitting here going, anyone could do this. A trained monkey could do this. Why am I special? But having someone on the outside who isn't in this morass of our minds say, you are working hard. You deserve the recognition you're getting for it, can make a huge difference. It also helps if you shift the focus off of yourself. If you can work in a team environment on achieving a goal, then it becomes much easier for you to say, this other person did so much work. This other person did this. This other person did this. Oh, and by the way, I did this. And that way you don't feel like you are claiming to have accomplished more than you possibly could have. You understand that the accolades deserve to be shared equally, including with you. Because if you're working with a team, then they will know if you're not pulling your weight. Be honest with yourself when you're assessing your abilities of what you can realistically accomplish. I mean, that sounds like a no-brainer, right? But seriously, how many times have you promised the sun, the moon, and the stars knowing that it was more than any one person could do? How many times have you beat yourself up for not being able to fulfill that promise, even though you knew from the beginning it was more than one person could do? So, yeah, be realistic. You know what your education is. You know what your knowledge level is. You know what your skill set is. Don't cut them down. Don't say you're not as accomplished as you are. But at the same time, don't take on more than you can be realistically expected to do. No one expects you to give up your entire life to achieve a set goal. Well, your boss might, but for the most part, no one human expects you to give up your entire life. Be willing to take baby steps, particularly if you tend to be a perfectionist. Get one small bit done, then the next small bit, then the next small bit. Don't focus on the whole overall project, because then you're going to be starting to feel overwhelmed. Bite-sized steps, one bit at a time, and then on to the next, and on to the next, and on to the next, will help keep what you're doing in a manageable proportion, instead of leaving you feeling like you've just taken on more than you possibly could do. When you're sitting there and you're wondering why you ever thought that you could possibly do this thing, question your thoughts. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this way? Advocate for yourself. If you had a friend who is sitting there going, I can't possibly, you would support them. Support yourself the same way. I can't possibly. Why not? I don't deserve. Why not? I'm a fraud. Why do you say that? The more that we look at these feelings, especially these feelings of not being worthy, these feelings of not being what we were perceived to be, and question these feelings and say, where does this feeling come from? What's the root of this? The easier it is for us to start calling ourselves out on our own bullshit. And then we can stop comparing ourselves to everyone else around us. Well, Sally in the next cube knows more than I do, so obviously she's the one who needs to get the acknowledgement for what she does. Maybe. Then again, maybe the approach you had was something completely different than what Sally would have done, and something Sally would never have thought of. Do not be bound by the limitations of other people. You can sit there and say, I did something unique. I did something different. I did something that was purely me. Instead of comparing yourself to what Sally in the next cubicle would have done. Now, one of the most insidious ways that this shows up in our life is through social media. How often, now I admit I used to be one of these people who would scroll through Pinterest and see what the Pinterest moms were doing, and I would just beat myself up that I could not give my kids the life that the Pinterest moms gave their kids. You know, single mother, working hard, working full-time, sometimes working 2 jobs to support everything. And I just hated myself because I couldn't homeschool on top of that. So, when you find yourself doing that, when you find yourself beating yourself up because you're not Pinterest perfect, put social media down. You do not have to be Pinterest perfect. You don't have to be anything but yourself, doing the best that you can for you. And then, it's okay to acknowledge that you feel this way. It's okay to say, I wish I could have given my kids the huge Christmas with gifts everywhere and Santa coming down the chimney. But it's also okay to say, I'm exhausted and I need to take some time to actually recuperate and be myself so that my kids can get the best version of me. Not the best version of Pinterest mom, the best version of me. The real mom who gave birth to them and loves them. And then the biggest thing you can do when you're battling imposter syndrome is you look that bully straight in the face and you say, you know what? Yeah, I feel this way, but damn if I'm going to let it control me. I am not going to let my fears hold me back from the things I'm meant to accomplish. I am not going to let this feeling of inadequacy that is a holdover from a bad childhood keep me from being me. That is the single most effective way that you can get past your imposter syndrome, is by saying, I refuse to let this win. And, that's a decision you may make 50, 60 times in a row. Just keep making it. Because you, my friend, you're worth so much more than you realize. And I'm so happy that you come to talk to me about it. So, there's a few hints for dealing with imposter syndrome. I know there's a few there that I'm implementing more often. But yeah, I'm Marna, and thank you for joining me.